Hi, do you listen to me? Okay. Yeah, I'm Pere. I work for Elasticsearch doing Logstash. I'm going to try to explain you a lot of stories about scaling Logstash in here. I used to always be a software engineer doing data, databases, persistency, graph databases back in the days, data analysis. I organize a workshop at FOSDEM. FOSDEM is a free and open source European development meeting that happens in Brussels. It's very nice and it's completely free, so I encourage all of you to go. Yeah, that's basically me. Before we start, I want to ask you a few things and tell you a few things too. How many of you here use Logstash? How many of you use it in production? Okay, more or less the same. Another thing that's important today, it is we got this. So I got 3 books that somehow I need to get rid of. So in the Q&A, who ask questions, whatever, we will decide and see what do we do it. And this is because of this that happens today. Today is Sant Jordi. It's a Catalan tradition in Barcelona. I'm actually from Barcelona, where the women give books to the men and the men give roses, and actually nowadays also books to the women. It's kind of the St. Valentine's Day for the Catalans, so it's good to give books to everybody. Yeah. This is what we are going to talk today. We are going to see what is Logstash, because not all of you know it, so should be some kind of a bit of introduction. We are going to see, actually, the main focus of this is how to scale Logstash in real life, different options that we can do, recommendations, and different other things, and actually seeing a bunch of experience from people dealing with this kind of architectures. So let's try to introduce Logstash. For the ones of you that doesn't know it, Logstash is a tool that was created in order to ship logs. All of us hate being on call. I mean, who don't hate being on call, it's not a human. I mean, wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m., it's not good. You just see your phone ringing, and you say no matter what. And actually, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you wake up sleepy. You don't know where the problem is. You don't know what happened, etc. And you wake up and you start saying, "Oh, the database was broken." But do we have a database? Which database? Whatever. I mean, you need to focus a lot in order to know the problem and to look where the problem it really is. So you see cars with this kind of wheels. And the next day, we are all sleepy because we try to play the hero game and working hard on night. The next day, you're not. Yeah, you feel like this poor cat sleeping all day. That's actually not good too. So we should get all this information together and analyze it so we can understand it easily. Because if we try to debug this manually by grep and by SSHing to different servers, whatever, it's not easy. It makes no sense. I mean, I cannot really understand and see what's in something placed here. I mean, it's an Apache log, but it's tricky, and it's hard to make decisions on here. So as I said, it's good to ship logs, and it's good to put it in a centralized place. I mean, that's no discussion in here. Because like this, then we can go to the database and see, oh, this is the pattern that was happened. This is then maybe the number of 500 was a scale routing, or we got no memory left. And it's easier than just doing some greps in files. And actually, it's very good because then we can also use this. And we can show to all our managers shiny pictures with colors that, I mean, be honest. We like logs, we like files, but it's easier to understand this when something happens. And it's cool. So with this kind of tools, we can archive these solutions. And we try to understand, it's easier for us to understand the problem when it happened. And for this, someone created Logstash. So this guy, Jordan Cicel, was basically working and suffering all the things that we suffer every day And he decided to do that, and it's a cool thing that we all use. So if you find this, get him a beer. Actually, he was here last year, and he got a very good impression of this conference. Now I'm here too. I hope to be on the same level, but it's very complicated. An important thing is we released the Kraken today. So Logstash 1.50 RC3, it's fresh out of the box in a few minutes, I think. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time. So, and GA is very, very close. So this means I think it was the last 8 or 9 months of effort in order to bring a new release out. So you should, all of you, check if you use it and actually report issues, because that's what makes an open source project very good, that the community reports issues. But let's go to the focus of this talk, trying to scale Logstash. And actually not like this, because this is a very huge plane. So what we try to do is to have small boxes, small instances of Logstash that are focused and doing his job all the time. So yeah, and having many of them, so we can actually process a lot of information. And we try to see stories of real life, because that's what matters. Theory is very nice, but practice is more interesting. The first stage of when you try to deploy or use Logstash is when you are in POC, development, whatever, and this looks like this. You get Logstash. Logstash is a shiny binary, a long-running process that can get data from one place, process it, and put data in another place. In here, it's you get everything in your machine. So you basically can experiment, and you can do a lot of stuff just by this. We have something that I like in the community. That's if something happens to we try to make the experience of the newbies very nice. So actually, Jordan always says that if someone that tries Logstash for the first time have a problem, it's probably a bug. I would like to extend this. If someone have a problem, you guys should go and look at the mailing list, look at the issues at GitHub and in different places, because maybe another one is having the same problem. And if we don't put everything in the same in one repository, we are really not aware that this is very important for a bunch of people. But we are here to talk about performance and scaling and installation. The first tip that we'll try to enforce or to try to say today is we have Grog. Grog, it's a nice way of writing regular expressions. I mean, who of here likes regular expressions? No, all of you are lying. All of you are lying. I mean, do you remember this very big file, very big Apache file? I mean, to write a regular expression, bare metal like this, it's very complicated. So for this, Jordan created Grog. That's basically a way of having names to a bunch of smaller regular expressions that are easy to understand. And this in Logstash is very nice, but it's actually in the same way as regular expressions, it's actually a problem too. So you should be careful when you create a Grog expression and trying to optimize it and think about it also too. That's doing a lot of work, and that's very easy. It's very good, but it's also very good that you guys, when you have this kind of way here, you also take care of your Grog expression, because it's 99%, most of the time, it's a source of slowness. You have a big pattern, you have a complicated pattern, and yeah, it's what makes it slow. And another important tool that I want to share here is something that a bunch of us are working. That's a tool that was originated to do integration testing, but it's completely wrong, because it's really doing performance testing. That's a gem, it's a Ruby gem that you can install in your Logstash installation, in your smaller one, so just one box, and it performs a bunch of performance tests. It basically have a Logstash configuration. It gets a bunch of data, and it runs it. And it gets it gives you a lot of information, like the top percentile, the top 20% of times, etc. So it's good. It's actually helping us to do performance testing, and it's actually helping a lot of some people internally in Elasticsearch in our team. But I wanted to help all of you, because it's good that when you do that and when you have a problem, a performance problem, you go here, you use it, you test it, yeah, so you know it. The next step, when you start doing something, you start with the same box. So you start with the same one Logstash, one output. But the second way of doing things, it is you have one Logstash and many outputs. That's kind of, for example, you want to store stuff in Elasticsearch, but you also want to send the notifications to PagerDuty, or you want to send emails, whatever. The most important thing in here to take or to be aware of, it is that if you have one output that's very, very slow, you are as fast as the slowest output you have nowadays. So it's important to, when you have a situation like this and you see some slow performance, that you try to think how fast are the different outputs that you guys are using. Yeah, after seeing this very beginner or these early stages, I want to show some architectures that are used to scale. The first piece of stuff that's used to scale is the lightweight shippers, because Logstash is writing in JRuby. JRuby is very fast, it's very nice, but it is still the JVM and Java. And in some situations or machines or VMs, it's not feasible to have this virtual machine. And it's actually a lot of people don't like to have the Java virtual machine hanging around in a lot of boxes. So that's these lightweight shippers. These lightweight shippers basically help you transform data or packet from one place to another place. There are a few of them, and yeah, it basically helps you to send data from one small box or one given box to another destination, and sometimes also can be another Logstash stuff. The first one of them is Logstash Forwarder. This is the former Lumberjack. How many of you here use Logstash Forwarder? Not so much. Do you like it? Yes? One thing that I like from here is that I was at the conference in March, and one guy from a university, they had in each computer in their labs, they had a small Logstash Forwarder agent, so they could send all the stats of what the students were doing in these machines to the centralized Logstash, and then they could analyze it. Yeah, something I forget is I tend to speak very, very fast. So if you guys don't understand me or something, you can do like this or whatever in order to say slow down. Yeah, one thing very nice from Logstash Forwarder is that it supports TLS and security. Because if you have these very small boxes in a lab, you might want to encrypt it and to secure this communication. It has low latency and low footprint. It uses the Lumberjack protocol. And one good thing from the Lumberjack protocol is that it ensures that something is delivered. So if nothing very wrong or nothing, like you go there with a bazooka and you kill the Logstash instance, or you kill the forwarder instance, what you are sending, it's going to be delivered. So it's reliable. And it's written in Go, so it's not Java. This is how you configure a Logstash forwarder configuration. It's a JSON lag, a JSON style configuration file. You can have your servers, your SSL certificates. You can specify a timeout. You can have regular expressions in the file patterns. You can ask stuff from the stdin. And one very important thing, it is this server configuration in there. If you have multiple of them, basically it picks one randomly, and if it's not responsive, it gets the other one. It's what we saw before about having different outputs, different shippers, sending to different places, so you get a bit of more high availability. Another lightweight shipper, it's Log Courier. How many of you here know and use Log Courier? That's so much. So the other ones just use Logstash, bare metal. I mean, like the whole Java thingy. That's good. It's also written in Go. It's basically a fork of the last 0.3.1 Logstash Forwarder, because one of the things that happened with Logstash Forwarder and Lumberjack, it is that is a lot of effort to get it done and up, and it's Go too, and most of us are Ruby developers. So one thing that most of you might be aware is that something is going to change with Logstash Forwarder, even if it was one release I think 1 month ago, with a lot of patches. So it's gonna take one direction, because it's not good when you have something there that's not up to date. So then you have the good thing of open source, that you get forks. So it's coming from Logstash Forwarder. It has a lot of more features. It ships to ZeroMQ, to TCP. It can be monitored. It can do some pre-processing in the log courier. That's something that Logstash Forwarder is not doing. You can reload configurations. Yeah, it is nice piece of software. And it's actually also written in Go. After we saw these lightweight shippers, we have the message brokers. It's the next step. You start by having a small workstation, a small VMs that you don't want to use a lot of bandwidth footprints. You want to have a small agent to ship stuff to another place. But if you want to scale out an architecture, you are using a message broker. You're using Redis, you are using RabbitMQ, you're using Kafka, you're using all these guys. And you get this at the end. So you get the shippers. In one side, you get the broker in front of the indexers, and usually the shippers used to be Logstash Forwarder, used to be Log Courier. Also can be Logstash as an agent, that if you give in the old versions the -agent option, you get just the smallest set of capabilities loaded, and it's a bit more agile, let's say like this. But the important thing in here, it is this broker side here, because if something happened to the indexer side, or if something happened to the shipper side, you get some buffer in there. How many of you are building this kind of architectures? Okay, so most of you can go home, because that's... I'm just kidding. This is very good, especially because in the indexer side, Logstash in 1.5 or until 1.5, it's not having persistent queues. So it has a buffer. So basically, you get an input, you get a filter, you get an output, and it has a buffer of 20 events being in memory. So if something happens to these 20 events, and if something happens and you kill the machine with a sick in or with a sick term, it's enforced in 1.5 to gracefully die. So to gracefully stop, it sends shutdown events. So it's taking care of all this process, but it is still not perfect. So if you, for example, have an exception in a log in a message that's not sanitized properly, that's an open issue for now. So it's good to have somehow these buffers in front. If you, so you get some kind of buffer again in the beginning. Another important thing it is that when you have a Logstash node and cluster or bunch of 100 different Logstashes processing logs, you cannot reload the configuration. And that's an issue. That's a problem. If you set one Logstash instance down because you want to change something, these events are not processed. If you want to keep it, that's a good thing of having this broker installation in here. All this stuff is going to change. I don't know if you are aware, but we put it in GitHub, the roadmap for the 2.0 release. It's basically having not a whole rewrite, but it's adding a lot of features on top, like this, that you have the option of reloading the configuration, that the different Logstash instances can talk to each other, and one very nice feature, that's that we are going to have persistent queues. So if something happened to the Logstash instance in the middle of the events that are being processed, all this information is going to be like piped in the Logstash pipeline. So and save it on disk. yeah, but still, yeah, not keeping out these brokers because it's very good. But I encourage all of you to take a look at GitHub for the roadmap because it's a very nice thing, I think. Yeah, a lot of people, or at least is my precondition or preconception, is starting to scale Logstash via Redis. So we are using this broker site here at Redis. Redis is easy to start. It works. So it's basically the same thing about the Logstash. It's basically working. How many of you here use Logstash with Redis? So most of you. One of the first stories that I want to share, it is about monitoring. So this is actually from a company here in Berlin. They want to monitor the status of the different services they had, and they needed to provide the different views. One problem with monitoring is that you want to be aware of something happened. You want to be aware if a system is up and running and getting all the metrics. So you want to actually have an architecture that scales. And for them, the first move was to use Redis, like I see from majority of you here. Redis, it's easy to start, it works, and now we have also the cluster capabilities for Redis. So you get a lot of power out of it. And they basically built the couple architecture using Redis as a broker. As I said, Redis is easy to scale, it's simple, it works, and the coupling is good. It gives you tons of freedom to extend. You would not realize how many people is still building architectures that are highly coupled. So they are all working together, and they have single point of failures. So if something happened to this system, everything blow up. One of the not so good things that these guys took from scaling Logstash that way, it is that it's not exactly from Redis or from this architecture, but for them was very important to set the right mappings. Sometimes, do you know the difference, right? I guess in the default Elasticsearch output, we have a mapping that tries to say the way that the data is going to be stored in Elasticsearch, and we have two kind of fields. We have the raw field, and we have the other field. So you have the IP, for example, you have the IP.raw and the IP. What it means that the IP row is not analyzed. So if you have the full name, for example, Berlin, if it's a name about the city, it will be Berlin capital. But if you have the analyzed field, it's going to be all equal. So you can do search actually in there. It's important to take a look at the mappings because you can store everything and you can use this default stuff. It's good, but it's actually when you want to scale an architecture very important to be aware of. And another takeaway from them was that it was not easy to monitor Logstash. And that's actually one of the things that we want to change for Logstash 2.0. We want to move to an API-driven Logstash. So it's easy for you guys to go there and ask an API and say, how are you doing? How many memory are you using? What's the status of your queue? And that is very good because like this, you can set up a lot of monitoring tools. Right now, to monitor, Logstash is a good tool to build a monitoring system, but it's not a good tool to monitor himself. Yeah, and what I said, the learning from them was that that you store everything, that it's possible to store everything. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. And that's one of the most important takeaways I would like to share today, but in general, that the database or that a processing system, a pipeline system like Logstash can do a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. So it's good to stop a bit and think, what are we doing? In our daily life, it happens to me every day at work, we are in pressure. We have to do things, we have to deliver, we have to implement new stuff because we get the pressure of other people asking us to do it. But it's good to think about it because then in the long run, it's going to be more safe for your pager duty calls. They're going to be less, for sure. That's one story. Another story, it is about an intrusion detection system actually built in Australia. what these guys try to do, they had a problem. They need to detect the performance of their firewall, what happened there, what were the rules being used, etc., etc. And what they did, well, it is what it's in here down here. So they got a TCP input to Logstash, to a broker, to Logstash, to Elasticsearch, and then to Kibana. They did a couple of all this architecture using Redis again, because it was the easiest thing to start with. They got a very cheap intrusion detection engine built with this kind of pieces of software. It's very cheap compared to other IDS and very quick to return of investment. And that's a good thing. When you want to start something similar like this, it's like we saw yesterday. We saw PacketBit. PacketBit is basically getting packets, getting low-level network information and putting this through Logstash to Elasticsearch to get analyzed. They basically built something very similar. The bad things, it is the TCP input in Ruby, actually in JRuby and Logstash, can be a bit tricky. So if you guys are using the TCP input and you are having problems, please report them, because it has happened a lot in the previous, in the past that this was leaky, having memory leaks, having a bit of issues in here. And something that they encountered here is that they needed to have two different setups, two different databases, two different ELK setups separately and secure, because they wanted that. This was painful for them at the very beginning, and it's actually not a lot Logstash only related, but from now on, there is a security product made by Elasticsearch that's called Shield. That's basically providing all these capabilities to have security and access control, etc. There are also other plugins that are open source that provide something similar, or you actually can do it yourself via proxies. So yeah, it's one of the not so good things to try to build the systems that you need to provide these two different clusters to analyze the data. Learnings from them. Not to have fear of using UDP. Maybe for you guys, it's not that good news or something very new that UDP is working somehow good for local networks and for small But for a lot of developers, this is kind of rocket science. So no fear of using UDP. It's actually working better in the Ruby environment or the JRuby environment. In the time before Shield, keeping data silhouette and security was a difficult thing. Shield is this thing, but there are a lot of other open source options in the market. And all of you use it, but that's how a configuration might look like for a Redis input here. Basically, as I said, we have inputs and outputs. And one of the good things of Logstash is that we have a lot of defaults. And this goes very good from one side, but also very bad from the other side. It is very good because you can get started up and running very easy, but it's actually very recommended. And if you have a complex thingy and you want to know what's going on under the hood, whatever, that you try to understand what these defaults are doing. And in the case of Redis, we have here name, host, port, passport, timeout, data type you want to use, the number of batch thingy, but no one of them is mandatory. No one of them is required, so you can actually have only an input, Redis, and forget. And there is an output with similar configuration options. And the next one is, or kind of recommended, is to use RabbitMQ to have this broker side. Is someone here using RabbitMQ? Okay, not so much. Do you all know what RabbitMQ is, right? Queue system, secure, somehow fast. This example. They had to manage 3,500 servers in 12 different platforms. This was for a big bank in the UK. This was very painful. And they had a lot of problems building their managing architecture and their logging server and their platform to get data about what was really happening in this very big set of machines. And after they had some pain, they start using RabbitMQ to separate the system, so they could, for example, turn down some of the intermediate systems in the pipeline. They could turn down Logstash. They could upgrade something else, and actually have the buffer of RabbitMQ waiting there in order to deliver all the events. Important thing I want to share here is that after some pain, so it's a bit of correlation. It happened to me always. People start thinking about scalability and start thinking about how to make something bigger and more reliable and big after they have some pain. And that's something we should try to avoid, I think. Good news, what things that they learn, as what I said, each platform was completely separated, so this led them to take down for a while Elasticsearch, to take down for a while whatever, and RabbitMQ was taking buffer. And the bad things, as all of you that is using or have used RabbitMQ, is that it can be not so fast. One very good thing that we have to be a bit careful, but it's very powerful. In Logstash, we have the worker idea. So actually, we can spin up for some inputs, for some filters, and for some outputs, different threads. It works in different ways, but it's just this very same idea in the three places. You should do it, but for them it was complicated because, for example, if you are using the multi-line filter, then you cannot do it. So it's this very same idea to be aware of what you are doing and thinking a bit about. Sorry? No. But I guess it would be something similar. I mean, it's the same idea. It's MPQ working. Learnings from these guys, desing to scale horizontally and vertically from the very beginning if the stuff is big. You would not realize. I was talking this morning to a company in Barcelona building an ad server. And in the ad market, to give ads to people in the internet, we all hate ads, but it's a very challenging environment to work. They have the same problem. They didn't thought about the scalability. Now they hit the limit in their platform, so their database is going down every time, and that's cost money. So eventually you will need it. Do it. And if your manager tells you we have no time, it's like when my manager told me in my previous life we have no time for test. So it's a kind of a contradiction. And the last one I want to share in here. And actually, one of the most interesting ones, this is another monitoring use case. I try to say 201, but because it's kind of the extension of the previous one. They were monitoring an internet and IPTV network equipment over the whole city of, not city, but over the whole country of Portugal. And they needed an alerting system because if something happens to the machines, to the routers, to any kind of equipment happening here, then there is a problem because, you want to see the TV. Again, after some pain, they start using RabbitMQ. We will see the architecture at the end. Good things, again, any component in his way of doing can generate metrics, can generate information, and can put it to a pipeline, to a buffer that's getting all this information buffered to another system that's going to be processed. In their situation, it's very common to have machines broken. So it can be a storm, can be something else, network failures. So it had the biggest tolerance when something went wrong. And the bad things, they had more components to manage. That's the biggest trade-off when you try to scale an architecture like this or any kind of architecture. You have to think twice. What's your knowledge base? What's your number of people you are having to build this kind of stuff? Because more resources means more cost and more time in order to manage all these platforms. As I said again, same architecture pattern. Broker provides a lot of flexibility. even if it's Redis, MPQ, Kafka, ZeroMQ, whatever, do it. It's gonna provide you a lot of power. And isolation of responsibilities. This, at the end, it gives you a clear view of what's happening. If you have small boxes that are doing whatever they are supposed to do, even if it's also only for Logstash, if you have a small box that's processing one type of log, if you have a 1,000 lines configuration for Logstash, it's going to be hard to understand. So it's better, in order to get, for one side, more performance, and for the other side, an easy of management, to have smaller configuration files. I mean, I've seen huge configuration in Logstash, and I think it's not good. And actually, anytime I see a big configuration file for Logstash, it's like pain assured. Yeah. This is what I was talking about. This was the architecture for these guys in Lisbon, in Portugal. They basically had all the equipment sending information to Logstash via TCP, UDP, syslog, whatever, and then all this pipe to a kind of alerting rule system that was called Expert. This was getting data from a database and then generating logs that again were piped to a Logstash through a file TCP and then to the alerting system. What happened if Expert goes down? What happened if the first Logstash goes down? You cannot really change any component in here without having pain. This is more common than what we think, still now. And this is how they built it at the end. They had the same thing, but with a RabbitMQ buffer. What happened here? They could change Expert. They could change one of the Logstash boxes in here. It's more. It can have things with Logstash from RabbitMQ to Graphite in order to get metrics. It's very powerful. So it only needs us to stop a bit more and think about what we are trying to build, because all this decision from them was based on pain. So my important takeaway from today too, it is don't wait for pain. Pain is bad. I don't like pain. And how do you make it happen? Like this, very easy. Only the host is needed for RabbitMQ to work at the beginning. You have to say your server address. The rest are good defaults for the RabbitMQ configuration. That's a button for Logstash. If there is a good default, we use it. You can do a lot of things here. Use SSL, verify SSL, validate the SSL certificates, enable the debugging, use bhost, And there's also an output for that thingy that has very similar options. But we have more. It's not only that Logstash supports Redis and RabbitMQ. We have Kafka. From 1.5, I think before 1.5 it was a kind of a contrib plugin, Kafka. But nowadays it's also supported by Elasticsearch. It's a lot of us working in this input. Kafka is a kind of a very very distributed log system that lets you mostly do the same thing here. It lets you implement queues. It lets you implement public subscript patterns. And it works very, very well. Same thing here. Configuration, easy. Anything that's here, it's a default. So it's very easy to get started. But it's actually very important to know all this configuration option in order that when you want to tweak it somehow. Important things if you are using Kafka, it's important to know how many topics do you want to create. Because this would kind of narrow your search and your performance to a given set of Logstash instances. There is more options in here, so it's not like this. It's very big, the Kafka different capabilities. And we also have ZeroMQ. ZeroMQ is a system to kind of, I like to say they're a socket on asteroids. It is very nice. For example, in my last employee before Elasticsearch, we were building actually also an ad platform and using ZeroMQ a lot in order to speed up the communication between the systems. And you can use it with Logstash, very simple. Only you need to specify the topology. And it was actually in the example that we saw before, one of the biggest things for them to speed up the communication between the components. But we have many others. We have Bieber, we have Mozilla, Heka. May I ask you how many of you, if someone of you is using Heka? Don't you know what it is? Okay. Bieber, it's written in Python. Heka, it's written in Rust, I think, Rust. Collect D, we have a lot of options. So the good thing it is, go there and try to build your own, or use whatever it is. If it's Logstash, obviously better. But if anything here, we should go and remove the idea of having this kind of super effort thingy and have all the logs, ship it to somewhere. That's basically me. So only 45 minutes me talking. Do you have questions? Keep in mind that I have books, so I have a way to bribe you for asking questions. Yeah, tell me, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. But Shield is...
Please repeat the question.
Yeah, sorry. He was asking about he had the problem of that not anyone is allowed to see everything. And one of the situations that happened with Elasticsearch is that before Shield and before many other plugins use it to do this thing, everyone could see anything. So you could have a manager that can ask a question to your database, and you can have everyone doing the same thing. No roles, no users, whatever. So he was asking about Shield, if Shield can do that. Shield can do that. But Shield has a counterpart of that. That's a commercial plugin. So if you are in subscription, whatever, you get it. But yeah, it's not open source. Yeah. More questions? You. Yeah, you were the first to say. Yeah. The idea of so basically the question is, are the shippers, or it's good to do some kind of transformation or adaptation of your messages and your log formats in the shippers or in the indexers? My takeaway here is that's a complicated question. So our idea my idea for the shippers is that something very small, very simple that gets data from a PC station, for a workstation, or for a VM, and send it to someone else with more resources and more RAM, memory, CPU, whatever, that lets you do that. As I said before, it's kind of a, Logstash Courier does some of this processing in the shipper side. Logstash Forwarder is not. In my experience, it's very good. It's better when you do this processing in the indexer side because you have more resources and you can actually get there. And you are not polluting your small machine that does this. Yeah, sorry. The question was about data retention and kind of best practices for data retentions. Do you guys know Curator? Yeah, so the basic idea of Curator is to do that, to schedule something from time to time and move indexes from one place to another. That's actually the way we try to say that people does this job. Otherwise, you will have to somehow create something similar because Logstash is not intended to do data, to apply retention policies. It's simple as someone that sends stuff from one place to another and enrich it on the process. Okay. Okay. Okay, so go there and open issues. For Curator, open another issue and say, this is very important for me. I was not aware of that. Thank you. Yeah, basically the idea is, or you go Curator or you go yourself. If Curator is not giving you this power, you will need to do it yourself or do it something else. I think it was you down there. The question was about event correlation and when you have one event that's the start, another event that's the end, whatever. There are a few filters that does the job in different ways. You? Yeah. No, it's not on purpose. Basically, because I wanted to show two very similar small lightweight shippers that does the work. If I must say, the way we handle syslog, it's going to change too, because there is many different options of syslog and many different options of syntaxes, etc. But yeah, it's a very good option too if it works. Sorry. If it can, yeah. I forget the order. I don't know. You? Can you say it again, please? AIX. I think there is an open issue for supporting AIX for Logstash for Water, but I really cannot answer to this question. I'm sorry. Yes, sir? Yeah.
Do you have any problems with the input? Because Logstash is dropping packets really quickly, in my experience. So I set up my syslog before that.
Yeah.
It's a buffer for Logstash.
Yeah.
And didn't see any buffer in your scenario.
So the question was about having buffers between the Logstash for Water and a Logstash instance, right?
No, from the client, which is not a Logstash forwarder.
Yeah. Actually, the important thing you have to take away here it is that any kind of buffer that you put before Logstash, it's good. So that in some places I didn't do it, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it.
But you didn't have any problems, because in my experience, firewalls are a massive amount of logs.
Yeah.
I think if it's such an amount you mentioned,
Yeah.
it should drop already, because it doesn't scale well.
Did you open an issue for that? Because it should not be an issue. So go there and open an issue for that, because it should not be a, if it's a problem.
I noticed it because in some testing I saw tried to assign it to two sites.
Yeah.
Diffs and this result. I saw that the Logstash results were fewer than the other ones.
Well, that is a very good thing. I encourage you to open an issue there, and we might investigate it more because it should not drop in a lot of situations, you should not drop messages.
Any improvement to TCP and Logstash 1.5? Because I'm using 1.4 and maybe it's fixed.
There are a lot of fixes. I don't know all of them by memory, but yeah, there is a lot of improvement. I mean, improvements of robustness, shutdown sequence. It got improved. The list is huge. Yeah. This is being recorded, right? It's complicated to say. What I can say is what it took to make 1.5. It took more than 8 months. The idea is not to wait until 2.0 to have newer stuff from the 2.0 roadmap in. So the idea is to have 1.6, 1.7, etc., etc. Yeah, so I cannot promise anything. I'm sorry. Sorry? So the question is, what about implementation on System D? Can you elaborate the question a bit more? I recall seeing something, but I'm not sure. You should look at the Logstash plugins organization in GitHub, because I think it's something there. I mean, it's more than 180 different plugins in the Logstash organization, so I don't know all of them by hand. More questions? Do you really want a book, right? It's a very good question. How do you archiving of logs because they have to have it for 10 years? That's a lot. I really cannot recommend you anything, because I mean it's a very tricky environment, and actually to do archiving of data in a secure way for 10 years, it's a whole really science. Yeah. But write to something else is the easy thing. But where do you write it? That's the good question, because that's something I cannot do. Sorry? Yeah, HDFS for 10 years? Interesting. Sorry? DVDs? 10 years? I think I don't have this much of all DVDs. Yeah, more probably. Sorry? You say very expensive things. So. More questions? We will need to figure it out, a way to give these 3 books out. So, no more questions? So the question was about multi-tenancy stuff for Logstash and Elasticsearch. For Logstash now, it's just the binary thingy. It's just a process that's running there, and it's all your responsibility to manage different instances and to build different, multiple stuff and put it wherever you want. So it's just a bin Logstash that gets your data and that ships to another place. And for Elasticsearch, it is. It's actually possible to do multi-tenancy and to have it in different nodes and to have stuff routed to one place and stuff routed to another place. You start asking too many questions. Very good. Keep going.
So the systemd question, there's a tool within the systemd GitHub repository which is called journalctl to Gelf. And that pretty much solves it. Because then you can use the Gelf input.
Disclaimer, I don't pay him. He's doing this for free. Did you create a pull request to update it to 1.1 or? Why? You down there. Don't use it. You always should have the same version. Yes. Always. So the question was about the embedded Elasticsearch option in the Elasticsearch output. If it's not for development, don't do it. Use the HTTP output or use something else. This is something that's only for development, for playing, for toying, and whatever. It's not an option. There's actually a lot of people using it in real life. Try to use this client to go to another cluster, whatever. No. Go to transport client, go to HTTP client, go to something that you build your own, but don't use the embedded option.
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Keep in mind. So, more questions?
We're getting away from Logstash, but on kind of these multi-tenancy Elasticsearch thing, how do you then deal with upgrades, right? Because you've got a bunch of tenants, maybe they're using different things, and you want to upgrade, you've got to upgrade your cluster all at once, and then you've got to coordinate with a million people.
It's problematic. It's always very problematic. Yeah, not a great solution now. But you are not getting away from Logstash, right? No. You are not using Logstash anymore?
No, we are using Logstash.
Okay. I was like, what?
But my multi-tenancy problems are more Elasticsearch.
Yeah. I mean, Logstash is the delivery man. Yeah. So, more questions? No more questions? Okay, so who wants a book? No, only 3. Can I do like this and you fight? So let's try to send this. You for asking a lot of questions. Please, the other ones don't kill me. Just try to make something even. I leave it them here. Do whatever you want. No, like here. I don't want to decide. So thank you.
Thank you very much.